So after riding my bike for around 12,000 kilometers over a period of 1 year and 1 month, here are the few accessories that I think are useful and worth your money on the 2025 KTM Adventure S model. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So ever since the launch of the 2025 KTM 390 Adventure S, it's been a rat race by third-party manufacturers and content creators alike to load up the bike with unnecessary accessories. Most of them even defeats the whole design purpose of the bike. Firstly, I think the bike in its stock condition is purpose-built for all kinds of purpose you can think about, be it city commute, long-distance highway touring, or even off-road trail riding. So there are only few accessories that I found that elevates the KTM 390 Adventure S experience by a small margin. So after testing a bunch of accessories for over a period of time that is close to 13 months and over a distance of 12,000 kilometers, here are the few accessories that I found to be quite useful that I think you should also can get for your benefit. I'll share the thought process behind each of these accessories, how they perform in the real world, and maybe some pros and cons along the way so that you can decide whether you need to have it on your bike or not. And at the end of this video, I'll share some of the accessories that content creators and manufacturers alike push you to get it installed on your bike, but which I think are an absolute waste of money and some of which are even a hazard to your bike. So make sure you stick around till the end of the video. Now a small disclaimer, none of the products that I'm going to mention are sponsored or have been sent to be by manufacturers for free of cost. All these products I have brought with my own money, tested it over a period of 13 months, some of which I threw it, some of which I exchanged it and all that stuff, thoroughly tested it out, and then I'm giving you my honest opinion. This channel is not so big or I'm not that so popular to get sponsorship by companies, but if any company is watching this, I'm happy to take on sponsorship. With that being said, whatever I'm going to talk about in this entire video are not sponsored. The first accessory that I want to talk about is Motovibe India's GPS holder. Now when I got the bike, the first thing I wanted to install was my CarPlay device from my previous Himalayan 411. That's one of the few accessories that I took from my Himalayan 411 and installed it on the new KTM 390 Adventure S. This GPS mount from Motovibe India is a 3D printed plastic holder onto which you have the RAM ball mount. It fits perfectly onto the slot given by the company for a GPS holder. The build quality is solid and it looks clean and neat, sleek, and sits well flushed with the bike. I've done a lot of hard jumps on this bike and even suffered a major accident which broke almost half of the bike, and that is a video for another day. And even then, this holder has held strong and nothing has happened to the CarPlay device. The only one issue I faced with this holder is that during hard jumps, this holder tends to come loose and the CarPlay device or the phone mount or the phone holder, whatever you have, tends to come loose and shake a lot. So the easy fix is to just tighten the screws. Like the holder you have here from the Aoocci unit, you can just easily tighten the screws, adjust and tighten the screws on the go. Another issue is that this holder tends to have a little bit of free play like this, a little bit of movement like this. What you need to do is just leave a little gap between the console and the phone holder or the CarPlay device. Just leave at least a finger breadth, because while going off-road you need a little bit of gap because this will keep moving, and if you don't have any gap here, this can tend to hit on the console or CarPlay device or the phone and it will damage the holder or the screens or the console or whatever it is. So just give a finger breadth of gap between the console and the CarPlay device or the phone holder and you're good to go. Before Motovibe India's GPS holder, I used to use a RevCrafts holder, but a small issue with that holder is that the ball mount on that holder is 3D printed plastic and it is screwed on the whole mount, and that ball head used to keep coming loose all the time, and I had to take off the entire assembly and then tighten the screw and then put it back, which lasts about another 500 or 1000 kilometers, after which it'll keep on coming loose again. That's why I switched over to Motovibe India's GPS mount and it has held strong. It's around 1600 rupees. I'm super happy with it and I highly recommend it. Next is the Aoocci C5 Pro CarPlay device. This device is fantastic. It has made life on the bike a lot easier than using a phone for navigation. Now it deserves a spotlight of its own, so I've made a separate video about it which you can check in the link in the I button above. Next is a side stand extender. I've had side stand extenders in all my motorcycles. It is very useful when it comes to parking the bike in slush and muddy areas. It will not let the bike sink in. I used to use a RevCrafts side stand extender which was very lightweight and plastic with a metal plate on the top, but over a period of time the screws kept on coming loose and it used to make a rattling sound. So I removed it and got the Viatara one installed. But unfortunately, just a week before shooting this video, the Viatara one also came loose and fell somewhere along the way. So right now I am in the market searching for a good sturdy side stand extender. So if you have any suggestions, please tell me in the comment section below. Next we come to the double adventure mirrors. Now don't get me wrong, the stock mirrors are fantastic. They are very sturdy, they doesn't vibrate much and give a good field of vision. But the issue was it sits a little outside the handlebar and a little lower. So whenever the bike bike used to fall, the first point of impact would be the mirror and it used to break very easily. So I got these adjustable double adventure mirrors from Sparify.com. It is a knockoff of the double take mirrors which cost like 16,000 a pair, while this one costs like 2,000 a pair. So the advantage of this mount is that it has two pivot points. So one is here and the second pivot point is there, and it is completely foldable. When going off-road, you can just completely fold it like this and keep it near your console. It is completely collapsible and completely foldable, and it sits inside the handlebar level. So when you fall, mirrors are not the first one to take the impact, and during a fall it will automatically fold like this. Second thing is, this is a stock mirror, and as you can see, the field of view is almost as similar to the stock mirror. Stock mirror is slightly bigger, but it gives almost a similar field of vision as the stock mirror. But stock mirror is quite heavy. It is very heavy, while these mirrors are very light. And as you can see, when the stock mirror sits outside the bar end, while on the other hand, you can set it like this so it sits inside the handlebar. A wide variety of adjustability it gives. That's the advantage of this. It's the beauty of this product. I've also stuck a blind spot mirror that you get from Amazon onto these mirrors to get a better field of vision, especially when going on highways, when the bikes or the cars tends to overtake you while changing lanes very close to you, you'll miss them coming behind you. So for that, I have stuck these blind spot mirrors, and it's very helpful, especially while touring on the highways. Now, the only downside to these mirrors are the vibrations. These mirrors are very lightweight, so they tend to buzz a lot once you cross like 80-90 kilometers per hour. But I don't mind that compared to the adjustability it has. So if you're not worried about the slight buzz you get at highway speeds, and if you go more off-road, then these adventure mirrors are the perfect choice. As you all know, the stock handguards that come with the bike are made of plastic and it's completely useless. Now, I used to use the Acerbis first copy handguards, which worked well, and I recommend for 90% of the people out there. It is very cheap, sturdy, and I've made a separate video on it which you can check in the link in the I button above. But with this bike, I've started taking this bike more and more off-road, particularly in dirt track practice sessions. And during those sessions, when you push yourself more and more, you tend to fall. And 4 to 5 times I broke the Acerbis first copy handguards. So I was like, instead of spending 1,000 rupees every time, why don't I invest in a much sturdier handguards that can take a beating over and over again? And that's how I decided to go for the Barkbusters original product. So when I was on the market looking for Barkbusters handguard, the bike specific one weren't out yet. So I got this particular frame which belongs to the Himalayan 451 and got it installed. The frame costs around 9,000 rupees and the plastics that come from Barkbusters cost around 5,000 rupees. So as suggested by a fellow rider, I got this Acerbis plastic installed. This is around 2,000 rupees for a pair. This is the original Acerbis X-Factory plastic that you get from RiseMoto.com. And now this setup is damn durable. I have had many falls during dirt track practice sessions in off-road racing and all that. And this frame and the plastic combination has taken a lot of beating, as you can see from all the scuff marks on this. It has protected the levers and my hands in numerous occasions. The build quality is absolutely fantastic. Even though it has taken all the beating to a point where there have been faults where handlebar has got bent and where the forks have got bent, even then these handguards have stayed strong. Now what you need to keep in mind is that these Acerbis X-Factory plastic handguards is only compatible if you have a handlebar riser installed. Otherwise this will tend to touch the visor or the windshield here. When I had the handlebar risers installed, it used to smoothly go over the edge of this windshield over here. So you need at least 1-inch handlebar risers for these handguards to be compatible with the windshield. Now when I've removed the handlebar risers, this was hitting the windshield over here. So what I've done is I've taken an Axum blade and just cut off the lower part of the handguard here so that it doesn't touch anymore and smoothly slides over the windshield part in the stock setting. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is the Barkbusters frame is not compatible with the stock bar and weights, but you'll get a spacer from Barkbusters. This is quite heavy. This spacer that you get from Barkbusters is quite heavy, and combined with the Barkbusters frame, I think it adds up to the weight of the stock bar and weight. So you'll not have any increase in buzz in the handlebar. This combo is worth the investment, even though it costs like 9,000 for the frame and 2,500 for a pair of Acerbis plastic guards. But I think it's worth every rupee that you spend on these handguards. Next we come to these crash guards from Gen 3 Duke 390. The stock crash guard that comes with the KTM 390 Adventurous is very good, is very sturdy, it takes a good amount of beating, and it comes with a slider too to take on the impact. But I felt the whole thing a bit too unnecessary, meaning that even in the international spec variants, they don't even come with a crash guard installed. And I was like, why do you need so much of metal to protect plastic anyways? So to reduce the weight and for overall looks, I got the Gen 3 Duke 390's crash guard fit onto this motorcycle. It's a direct fit, and in my opinion, it is more than enough to protect the critical components on the bike during a fall. As you can see from all the scuff marks here, these crash guards have taken quite a beating from so many falls in off-road trails and during dirt track practice sessions. This is quite strong, quite sturdy. It has taken quite a beating, and a pair costs only 1,500 rupees. So I think it is much better alternative to the stock crash guard that you see that is much bigger, vibier, buzzier and all that. This is strong enough, this is good enough. Next we come to the PPF. Now when I got this bike delivered in March 2025, the KTM 300 Adventure X model wasn't out yet. Now, I'm not a big fan of white paneling and white things on the motorcycle, so I wanted to convert these white areas into black. So since the black panels from the KTM 300 Adventure X wasn't out in the market yet, the only option I had was to get black PPF done. And that's how I got the black gloss PPF for the white parts and clear PPF for the orange parts. Later on, when the 300 Adventure X was launched and even the 250 Adventure was launched, they come with black panels. Now the PPF costs around 12,000 rupees and the panels cost around 2,500 rupees. So next time if the PPF completely comes off, I'm going ahead with the black panel that comes with the Adventure X. I also got the visor tinted from a local stickering shop. It costs around 600 rupees and in my opinion, it looks beautiful. Next is a generic helmet lock that you get in Amazon just to secure the helmet whenever you are out on the ride. Next we come to the fork seal covers. I use the fork seal covers from Mototrendz, which costs around 650 rupees. It does the job well and is good enough to protect the USD forks from any muck and grime. Now, you'll get much more good looking options from brands like Kriega that cost around 2000 rupees, but I think just for a fraction of that price, this also does the job well as similar to them. Now these fork seal covers are not one-time install and forget accessories. You have to remove them after every off-road ride, wash them and install it again, because if the fork seal covers get a lot of slush and muck in it, it'll tend to dry and that itself will cause scratches and damage to the forks. So once it gets a lot dirty, remove it, wash it and then put it back again. Next we come to the grab rail. Now the stock grab rail is quite heavy and quite wide and doesn't close at the rear. So that's why I got the grab rail from AutoEngina. This weighs equal to one side of the stock grab rail and it closes in the rear also. This closed loop helps in hooking up the dirt sack rackless saddlebags that I've been using for many years now. A separate review on that product I will make because it too deserves a spotlight of its own.
The only issue I face with these grab rails is that, as you can see, the paint has started to come off. Every time I put the helmet locker here on one side, due to continuous friction, the paint is coming off and it is starting to rust. This has not happened in the stock grab rails, but for some reason this is happening in the AutoEngina grab rails.
Next we come to the Rideflex foldable brake lever from Revcraft. This well complements the stock foldable gear lever. Now if you've been a long-time viewer of the channel, you would know that I'm an absolute fan of easy brake system from Prospect that I've had it installed on my previous bikes as well. I had it installed on this bike also, but unfortunately it broke off. So I got this bendable brake lever from Revcraft. It's very sturdy, the build quality is great and it is very useful, especially when you travel off-road. It costs around 2,500 rupees, but I think it's worth the money.
So there are two issues that I've noticed with this foldable brake lever. One is that these screws that you see here are very sharp and very pointy. So when you're riding with a sandal or a chappal or a shoe with thin soles, this can get a little pokey and a little uncomfortable. It is not an issue when you're riding with riding boots because it will have thick soles and you'll not feel all this pointy sharp thing. Second thing is that the spring, which helps in the lever being foldable, it'll catch muck and grime very fast and it'll get jammed very fast. Like when you ride a one session of dirt track or a trail ride, when you try to push it like this, it'll get jammed. So it needs constant cleaning and lubing with the WD-40. Once you clean it, wash it and lube it with WD-40, it works very well.
Next we come to the touring seat. Now the stock seat is good enough for 90% of the use case scenario. I haven't had any issues with the stock seat at all. I've heard some of the heavier riders have issue with the stock seat in that it's not comfortable while going on long highway trips. But I never had any issue with the stock seat. Now when I tried this touring seat on another bike, I felt it was a little more comfortable than the stock seat. That is why I got this touring seat. Now the touring seat is slightly heavier, firmer, denser, a little wider and taller than the stock seat. It is a little more comfortable than the stock seat, especially when you're going on long highway rides. Now I weigh 62 kgs and I never had any issue with the stock seat that comes with the bike, but this felt a little more comfortable to me, not by a big margin, by a small margin. So I got this. So it's like a luxury that if you have the extra money, you can spend it on. It's not going to greatly improve the experience on the stock seat to the touring seat. I would suggest you to get the touring seat only if you have a lot of issue with the stock seat, and it costs around 2,900 rupees and I think it's worth it. Now please don't ask me about the pillion comfort on this touring seat because I never ride with the pillion and I have never ridden as a pillion on this touring seat. So I can't comment on that because I simply don't know. As a habit, I don't like to comment on things just out of speculation, but only after I thoroughly try and test it out. Now another thing people will be eager enough to know is that how do I manage the tall seat height? Now this bike is particularly taller than the stock KTM 300 Adventurous because I'll come to it later. I have installed the Zedling rally suspension, so the overall height has gone up. Now it sits close to 845 mm actually speaking. I am 5 feet 5 inches tall, that is 165 centimeter. No, I don't have planted foot. In fact, my both the feet will dangle in the air and will not even touch the ground if the bike is fully upright. But this bike is so easy to ride than my previous Himalayan 411 or the Scrambler 400X. That's how centered the weight balance is, and that's how narrow and nimble the whole chassis and the frame is. That's the beauty of this bike. So if you're going to ask me on the comments about my inseam length and all that stuff, I'm simply going to ignore because there's no point in debating all that. You don't need to have have a planted foot or even need to tiptoe both the feet to ride a tall bike. I've repeated this over and over again, and I will talk more about this in my review video that is coming up next. So stay tuned for that. Till then, please go and take off-road training and practice more and more on dirt tracks and learn how to ride a tall bike with just one planted foot. Riding tall bikes is a skill that you can easily acquire, and if I can do it, anybody in the world can do it, especially when this bike is so much forgiving and beginner friendly. Don't be lazy and look out for validation. Just go to a training center, get training, or go out and practice until you get it right. With that being said, I'm sorry I'll not be responding to any comments related to seat height. Next is the heel guard that comes from KTM itself. Now, I don't ride with the pillion, so I removed the pillion footrest altogether. It saves more than a kg of weight from the bike, and in the place of the pillion footrest, you will get this plastic heel guard from KTM itself that you can install it. It's around 400 rupees and it's strong and sturdy also. Now remember, the lighter the bike, the better it performs in all aspects. Next we come to the tail tidy. Again, to reduce the weight, I got rid of the bulky tail end and got this beautifully designed tail tidy from Skydd. It costs around 1000 rupees. It's very sturdy and does the job well. Next is the bullet indicators. Now the stock LED indicators on the rear used to break very frequently, and it used to break in parking lots. Whenever I used to park the bike in tight parking spots, when I come back, I'll find the indicator to be broken and the bike to be misplaced. So people, when they brush against the bike, the indicator just breaks off. And every time the indicator breaks, to get it replaced, it costs around 1000 rupees. So that's why I got this bullet indicators from HJG, and it costs around 500 rupees, and it sits very sleek and flushed within the frame. So it does not break easily and does not come into contact with the ground during a fall. In my opinion, it looks nice also and complements the tail tidy well.
So the only issue with these bullet indicators are that you have to cut the wire that comes from the indicator. So below this area, you'll have a coupler which attaches the indicator coupler to the main wiring harness. From that coupler to the wiring of the indicator, stock indicator, you have to cut those wires and attach and insulate this bullet indicator wire to that. It doesn't come with a attachment or a coupler kind of thing to connect to the main wiring harness. You have to cut wires. That is one thing. Another thing is that these small bullet indicators have much lower impedance than the stock indicators. So because of that, it will show a warning like this, like the turn signal is on. But if you press the button, it will go off. Every time you switch on the indicator, after switching on the bike for the first time or after switching on the ignition, it will show this turn signal error and the indicator light will blink very fast, even though the indicators are working normally. And on the console, the indicator will tend to blink faster than the normal rate. But the indicators work fine, and there is no other issue with any other like cruise control or any other electronics, ABS, traction control, changing modes, nothing. No issues at all. As you can see here, the indicators work in a normal pace. All the 4 indicators work in the usual pace. Only in the console, it will show that it is blinking faster than normal. You don't need to worry about that.
Next, we come to the suspension. The stock suspension sucks in my opinion. I mean, it is much better than the competitors in the market, but for my use case scenario, at least it used to not work well in my favor because I was so much spoiled by the YSS suspension on my Himalayan 411. So I got the Zedling rally suspension installed on this. Now I'll make a separate video on this suspension because it deserves a spotlight of its own. So stay tuned for that. Next is a side stand. Now when I got the rally suspension installed, the overall seat height went up from 830 to 845 mm, and the bike used to lean a lot on the left side on the stock stand. So I got the side stand from Adventure R. The Adventure R side stand is much longer than the Adventure S side stand. This took care of the lean angle for me. It costs around 1000 rupees and you get it from the KTM service center itself.
The only issue with this side stand was that since it is longer, it used to come and touch the swing arm here. So I asked the service center and they tell me that the swing arm geometry and the attachment geometry and all something related to here, the entire assembly is different from that of the Adventure R and the Adventure S. So what I did is I gave to a third-party mechanic who welded a stopper here, inserted a rubber bush so that now it doesn't touch. It comes and stands right here. It doesn't touch the swing arm at all.
Next is the 48 teeth rear sprocket from the Enduro R and the chain from the Enduro R. Now forget all the Fuel X, the BMC air filter and the aftermarket exhaust and all those performance upgrades and all that. I think the best performance upgrade, so to speak, that you can get for the Adventure 390S is this rear sprocket and the chain from the Enduro R. The stock sprocket has 46 teeth and this one has 48 teeth. It improves the initial acceleration to a bit and then it improves the time taken for you to reach the higher revs. So it accelerates a little quick and it is so much fun, especially in off-road. Now regarding all those performance mods like the Fuel X, the BMC, the dyno tuning, the aftermarket exhaust and all the stuff, I made separate videos on it when I used to try and test it on my Himalayan 411. And in my opinion, long story short, I don't think it is worth the money for a marginal improvement you get in the performance of the motorcycle. And I think those marginal improvements are mostly placebo effect. I'll be definitely not installing any of those performance enhancing mods on my KTM 390 Adventure S. Instead, get the rear sprocket from the Enduro R. It costs around 3000 rupees for the sprocket and the chain. The chain has 6 extra links than the stock chain. So along with the sprocket, and get the chain as well. Now you'll ask me, will it reduce the top speed? I think so, it'll reduce the top speed because it revs faster, but who's going to sit at 160 km per hour all day when you're cruising along the highway? Now I cruise at 140 km per hour all day with the Sprocket and I have had no issues at all. The bike revs a little faster, it reaches the peak RPMs a little faster, it accelerates a little quicker, so you will feel the bike overall a lot peppier and it is mad fun to ride, especially on the dirt. Next is a generic screen guard that you see on the console. As you can see, it is already developed a scratch. Now it is not a necessity, but it's an additional layer of protection to the expensive console. This one I got it from Amazon. It's a generic one which you can order for the Gen 3 Duke 390 since both the consoles have the same dimension. Next we come to the tank grips or the tank pads from Ridetek. These tank grips are amazing. The bigger patches I've stuck onto the areas that come in contact with my knee and leg while standing and riding, and the smaller patches I've stuck to the areas that come in contact with my knees while sitting and riding. So when you hug the frame while standing and riding, it'll give you adequate grip and your knee and leg will not keep moving around otherwise in the smooth plastic which doesn't give any friction. They have a large patch that you can stick over the side decal, but it covers almost like half the KTM logo. That's why I stuck a small patch on the side decal where my knee comes in contact with the surface while sitting and riding, because I need maximum grip and support while standing and riding, especially while going off-road. Even though these come in a predetermined shape and size, you can cut this to your liking, to whichever shape you like, and then you can stick it on. And once it's stuck, it's never coming off. It's quite sturdy and durable and can withstand multiple pressure washes. Next we come to the lower front fender. Now as you can see in this entire bike, the white parts I made it into black using PPF. Now the front fender had a lot of grooves, so they told me that PPF won't stick properly to the front fender. They have only white and orange fenders. So I wanted to get it painted black. So I gave to the shop to get it painted black. So they asked me 2 days time to get it painted because it will take time for the paint to dry and all that. So I got the front fender removed and I gave it to them, dropped it off at the shop, and I rode back home. Now near my home there's a short stretch of road which will be usually empty and where I usually gun it. Like I'll whack open the throttle and just keep using quick shifter to accelerate from second gear to fifth or sixth gear. So now when I was coming back home after dropping the fender and when I was accelerating hard, I noticed something different. The bike felt a lot planted and a lot more stable. I could immediately notice the difference, but I was wondering what had happened to the bike that it felt different. And over the period of next 2 days, the bike was much enjoyable to ride, especially when you're accelerating very hard. And after 2 days, I went back to the shop when they called me that the fender is ready and it is painted black. Got it installed, came back to the same road, I whack open the throttle and the usual feeling of instability is back. The front started feeling a little unstable and not very planted at high speeds, especially during hard acceleration. I started noticing this stark difference over a period of the next 2 days. And then it came to me suddenly, it clicked that the front fender was making all the difference. The front fender catches a lot of wind and causes drag to a point where you can notice the difference in handling, especially on the front side during hard accelerations. And the difference is very stark when the fuel tank is almost empty. The front will feel very light, slightly jittery, and you'll not get a planted feel on the front when you're accelerating very hard. So then immediately I placed an order for the lower fender from KTM, and when it came, I removed the high fender and I got that planted feeling back during hard accelerations. But mind you, this wind drag is noticeable only when you get an empty straight stretch of road and you're just spinning the throttle and then quickly shifting the gears using quick shifter and accelerating hard. That's the only time when you feel this drag. Otherwise, in every other use case scenario like during city commute or highway touring or off-road riding, you don't feel a difference at all. Now I'm sure this particular low fender will give enough trouble during the monsoons and during any slushy rides, because the slush will tend to get stuck between the tire and the fender and the wheel will stop rotating. So I'm sure it's going to give that trouble in the next few months. But I am willing to live with it because once I removed the front fender and installed this low fender, I think it has improved the looks of the bike. The bike now looks damn sexy, as similar to a T7 or a Transalp without the high fender. Next we come to the Reise TrailR tires. Now Reise TrailR tires are the only tires that I've come across in Indian market where it gives best grip off-road on the dirt while being legal enough and decent enough to ride on tarmac. Now I've made a separate review video on these tires when I've used it on the Scrambler 400X, and that video you can check in the link in the I button above. Now they don't have a 21-inch tubeless tire yet. They have the rear 17-inch tubeless, but 21-inch is a tube type tire. But I am running the tube type tire without tube on a tubeless rim. Now theoretically the sidewalls of the tube type tires are weaker than the tubeless tires, but I haven't had any issues with air leak or the tire jumping out of the bead at any point of time. I have even ran the front tire at pressures as low as to 22 psi as opposed to the recommended 28 psi on an off-road race, and still I haven't had any issues at all. So as long as you run adequate tire pressures, I don't think you should have any issues running a tube type tire on a tubeless rim without a tube. Now here are few accessories that I think you shouldn't waste your money on. First is cage like crash guards. guards. Now there are many companies that push you to install cage-like crash guards, telling that the stock crash guard is trash and they vibrate and they buzz and all that stuff. Now personally, I think the stock crash guards work fantastic. They are very good, very sturdy, very durable, and the sliders also do a good job. Now in few of the faults, only my slider had broken up and the crash guard had absorbed all the impact without transporting to the chassis. It works great for 99% of the situation. In fact, I even think it is an overkill. That is why I removed it and got the Gen 3 Duke 390 crash guard installed on my bike. Some owners in the group tell that they vibrate a lot while riding. So when you ask how do they know that they vibrate or not while riding, they'll be like, hold the crash guard while you're revving the bike, you will feel the vibration. I'm like, which idiot does that while riding? Which idiot holds the crash guard while riding the bike? It makes no sense to me at all. I don't know the thought process behind it. I mean, if you hold any part of the bike while riding, it will vibrate. So that doesn't mean you can remove the engine or whatever other parts buzzes you while riding the bike or while revving the bike. So it doesn't make sense to me at all. And as I mentioned earlier, I met with an accident where I had to change the side panels on one side. These side panels that you see, the orange color on my bike, just cost 2,161 rupees on the bill. So I'm like, why spend 5,000 rupees on a crash guard to protect a 2,000 rupees plastic? Again, it doesn't make any sense to me. These side panels are so cheap and it takes the impact, and if it breaks off, replace the side panels. There are many companies offering lower crash guards and higher crash guards and the crash guards that goes all the way around and all that stuff. It is absurd. In my opinion, it is absurd. It will add a lot of weight. Granted, a 400cc bike can pull that much amount of weight, but as you know, as the bike gets lighter and lighter, the performance gets better and better. In my Himalayan, when I got rid of a lot of weight, the performance gain that I got from just weight reduction was much better than Fuel X, BMC air filter, Power Rage exhaust, Iridium spark plugs and all those combined. So my suggestion will be to save yourself some money and don't get all those expensive cage-like crash guards which are good for nothing, actually speaking. Keep the stock crash guards and that is good enough in my opinion. The second such mod that I don't want you to waste your money on is bash plates. Every single KTM accessory video that I come across online tend to give a negative opinion about the stock bash plate that comes on the 390 Adventure S. And it is mostly out of speculation, seeing that how thin it is, how flimsy it is, it will not withstand blah 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 and all that. Now I've had so many times where the stock bash plate has got so many hits with rocks, and there was a time when I got stuck on a bund on the bash plate where both the tires were on the air. Then I had to get help to get that bike out of the sticky situation. This happened during a trail ride. And on multiple times during the northeast trip also, a fully loaded bike with luggage fell on deep potholes and craters and the bash plate got hit very badly. But even then it has taken all the impact and has suffered only minimal damage. The looks can be deceiving on the stock bash plate. It looks very flimsy, very thin and all, but trust me, it is sturdy enough for 99% of users out there. There is no necessity for you to get heavy cage-like bash plates that simply adds weight to the bike and nothing else.
The only disadvantage that I noticed is the two clamps that holds the bash plate over here. One over here and one over there. That is very weak. That is the weakest link in the system. Not the bash plate, but the clamps. Those two clamps bent a lot. So the first time the bash plate got a major hit, nothing bent the bash plate, but it bent the clamp. So the service center folks had to remove the clamps, beat it and straighten it out, and then install the bash plate back again. And next time when I went, they told me that you keep on beating that clamps again and again, it will break off. So you have to change the whole entire assembly in the system, which will cost a lot. So the aftermarket bash plates that you see attached to those clamps, the one whichever is available in India, most of them and 90% of them that I've checked it out attached to those clamps. That makes it useless. So this bash plate is good enough. If you're getting an aftermarket bash plate that is much heavier and much thicker than this, but still attached to those clamps, the weakest part are those clamps. So the bash plate might not take a hit or get bent or whatever it is, but it will transfer all those impact and the clamp will get bent, which defeats the whole purpose. I've seen one bash plate from Moto Outback India, some company abroad. They use these crash guard bolts to connect to the bash plate. So if you can get hold of those kind of bash plate that uses multiple attachment and bolts, then it is useful. Otherwise, getting an aftermarket bash plate that just connects to those stock clamps are useless. Might as well use a stock as it is. It is perfect and built for the job. It is good enough.
The third thing that I want to talk about is a seat modification. The stock seat is beautifully designed. It's well padded enough and it is very sleek and thin enough to hold on to the frame while standing and riding off-road. It is beautifully designed so that even though it has a tall seat height, short riders can easily put the feet down and manage the bike because of the slim seat. Now, I don't understand the whole purpose of adding foam and gel and all the stuff to the seats, thereby ruining the very purpose it's designed for. If your back hurts that much, then you should definitely take frequent breaks and you should definitely improve your riding posture and riding position. It is not always a seat that is causing you discomfort, but everybody is quick to go and modify the seat and destroy the purpose of the beautifully designed seat. Granted, the pillion seat is quite narrow for a pillion to sit, just judging by the looks of it. So adding a foam gel or a gel pad or some kind of modification to the pillion seat, if you have a pillion that tours with you regularly, then it makes sense. These motorcycle seats are not designed to be comfy. It's not designed to be like a sofa where you sit and plush and you'll feel quite nice and relaxed and all that. No, it is stiff to serve a purpose. So improve on your posture, improve on your riding position, and if it hurts that much, take frequent breaks. If you find the stock seat so much uncomfortable, try the touring seat as well, but I don't think it will make a great difference. It's better than the stock seat, but not by a big margin. Next is the big top boxes that you see on these bikes. I call them as pizza delivery boxes because it looks like that. In my opinion, these large, heavy top boxes are a hazard than a convenience, because this bike being so lightweight, when you install such a heavy box on the tail end, it shifts the weight, they shift the center of gravity a little towards the subframe, a little behind, and it lifts the front end, which is highly dangerous in my opinion, especially when you're going very fast on the highways. For example, after installing the Zedling rallying suspension, I misjudged the preload, or I misjudged the total weight of my luggage by a factor of 10 kgs. When I fully loaded the bike and started my journey from Guwahati to Shillong, I started noticing a slight wobbling in the front, especially during hard acceleration or when going fast on a straight highways. I couldn't figure out what was going wrong. And then the next day when I took it out to ride around the city without the luggage, that issue was completely gone. That's when I noticed that just a 10 kg difference had made a huge shift in the weight balance of the bike, because that the bike itself is such a lightweight machine. If you install these heavy top boxes on heavy bikes like the BMW 1300 GS and all, which is itself is a very heavy bike, it's not going to affect much on the handling. But when you install it on a 180 kg motorcycle, especially on the KTM Adventurous, which is very sensitive to a little bit of weight change, it shifts the whole weight dynamics, and it actually is dangerous in my opinion, and it causes a lot of wind drag too. So big top boxes are a big no-no in my opinion. The next thing I want to talk about is the saddle stays. Now the saddle stays make sense for the pillion to access the back seat, and when you want to load the luggage, where you can have saddle bags with the luggage on the side and the pillion in the center. But for every other use case scenario, I would highly recommend you not installing heavy saddle stays, but go for the rackless system from Dirtsack. I've been using that for almost 2 years, first on my Himalayan 411 and now on the KTM 300 Adventurous, and it is absolutely fantastic. It is very durable, highly convenient, and keeps all the weight very close to the bike and centered to the front of the bike. So when you're riding, even with a fully loaded luggage behind, especially when you're riding off-road, when you're standing and riding, feel that the bike is fully loaded, you will not get the feeling of luggage sitting behind. You can easily maneuver the bike, and riding on broken stretches of tarmac and off-road while touring becomes a lot more fun, and it avoids extra weight of the saddle stays too. In my opinion, avoid saddle stays as much as possible and use rackless system instead. Next thing I want to talk about is aux lamp. Now the headlight that comes as stock on this bike is absolutely the best in the segment. It is so bright, and it is almost as good as the Vaishnu LED touring headlight that I had on my Himalayan 411 and the Scrambler 400X. Now the height when it comes stock is a little above, and it tends to focus the beam on the trees above, so you need to adjust by looking at the user manual. It's very easy to adjust, and as you know, there is a lot of ambiguity around the legality of aux lamps in India. Even though some say that it should sit under the level of headlight and it should be less than the wattage and all that, some say that all those laws are applicable only if the aux lamps comes as stock and pre-installed from the factory itself. Anything that we install extra are completely illegal is what they say. If you are someone who exclusively tour at night, then aux lights are useful for you, but unless you don't do that, then I don't think aux lights are necessary at all in this bike. Headlight is good enough for 99% of the application. Next thing I want to talk about is the vibration dampening bash plates and vibration dampening accessories that you get in the market. Now when the Enduro R came out, people noticed that there is a crossbar that links the two foot pegs on the Enduro R, which makes a little smoother than the Adventurous. So many manufacturers came up with some bash plates that link the two foot pegs and plenty of other accessories that claim to reduce the vibrations. Now I'm telling you, these are all placebo effects. They claim 20-30% reduction and all, but it's just anecdotal numbers and not at all based on any real data. Don't go running and chasing behind that. This bike makes a lot of vibration. This bike buzzes a lot. It's the character of the engine. Get used to it. Vibration dampening accessories that don't do anything at all. I'll talk more about vibration, buzz and all those aspects in the review video which comes next, so stay tuned for that. Next I want to talk about is the handlebar risers. Now I used to use a 1-inch handlebar risers from Skydd, and it served the purpose well. I have done long distance touring with it. It is very comfortable and all that stuff. But when I started getting more and more into off-road riding, especially when standing and riding, I realized that the stock position is the best position for off-road riding on this bike. If you install even a 1-inch riser, it shifts the whole weight slightly behind, which actually translates a lot in terms of weight distribution, especially when you're riding off-road. Like at times when you accidentally whiskey throttle, or at times when you lose control, or at times when you hit some bump and you get thrown back a little bit. If you have handlebar handlebar rises on, you're on the verge of shifting the weight back a lot behind, and that can lead to losing control over the bike. The stock position is very much good enough to prevent all those from happening. Even though you are a little bit more stooped up in the front, it's actually helpful while riding off-road. So if you use this bike only for city riding or only for highway touring, then you may consider a handlebar riser. But then again, there are many other bikes out there that does these two jobs much better than this bike alone. But if you want to get into more and more off-roading, if you want to get in more control of the bike while going on trail rides and dirt tracks, I recommend not to use the handlebar risers. I removed the handlebar risers on my bike and I'm using the stock position, which gives much more confidence and much more control over the bike than when you're using a 1-inch handlebar riser. I'll talk more about the weight distribution, the weight dynamics, handling dynamics, and all that stuff related to the bike performing both off-road and on-road in detail in my review video that is coming up next, so stay tuned for that. Next is the main stand or the central stand. Now, I had the main stand installed for almost 6 months, and I must tell you, it is very convenient, especially when you want to lubricate the chain and fix a puncture and all that. It is very convenient. But when I got the Zedling rally suspension upgrade, the bike overall lifted a bit and the main stand became useless because it used to simply hang below and it never used to raise the rear tire as you would normally raise using the main stand. So I removed the main stand off and then started using a paddock stand at home for all the maintenance purposes, and while on travel I use the motor jack to elevate the rear wheel for lubing and all that. And surprisingly, I'm not missing the main stand at all now, because whatever I used to use with the main stand, I'm able to use it with other paddock stand or the motor jack as well, and it's not been an inconvenience at all. So I think you don't need to install a main stand, especially when you are having tubeless tires. You don't need to carry the additional weight of a main stand, and it tends to decrease the ground clearance a bit too. So I don't recommend using a main stand for your KTM 300 Adventure S. So I will leave the links to all these products in my blog, which link I'll post in the description below. So you can go there and check it out. Now, there's an issue in that blog where the links will not have an underline. That's something I'm trying to get it rectified. But if you hover your cursor over the product name, you'll be able to click it and it'll take you to the product page. So in the next video, I'll give you an honest review about the KTM 300 Adventure S after 12,000 kilometers of riding it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and why I absolutely fell in love with this bike. So stay tuned for that video. Till then, if you want to check out the trip that I did to the Northeast on my KTM 300 Adventure S, I will leave the link in the I button above so you can go and check that out as well. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. See you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.